I knew I wanted to be an artist from the 3rd grade when I brought a drawing of an elephant home that got rave reviews from my mother.
I first met the artist Margery Amdur in the fall of 2012 to film her show at the Projects Gallery in Philadelphia's Northern Liberties neighborhood.
I'm from Pittsburgh and actually started taking classes at Carnegie Mellon while I was still in high school. I studied printmaking and painting and was then, and still am, interested in many materials and techniques.
Margery Amdur received her BFA from Carnegie Mellon University and her MFA
from the University of Wisconsin at Madison and began making installations.
This exhibition featured 2 different styles of work. One style was work entirely made out of hand-cut and colored cosmetic sponges. The other style was a collage of flower forms made from various materials, including mylar. Within a year, both styles would appear in important venues. The flower collages evolved from work Margery had made previously that were based on paint-by-number kits. And they were prototypes for an important piece of public art that she was working on for the city of Philadelphia's subway system. Margery had been chosen to create a major installation piece. Her piece was entitled Walking on Sunshine, and it covers 4,000 square feet of the Spring Garden subway station platform.
When I first got the project, I came down to the station and I overheard a commuter saying the Spring Garden was an alienating and congested space. So one of my goals was to create these welcoming environments for the 6,000 daily commuters. I wanted commuters to feel enveloped by the work and to feel as if they were walking on handmade collages. I wasn't really interested in designing the floors on the computer. I guess my gift as an artist is that I transform materials. I make my hand visible in all of my work, and I wanted to do that with this project as well. The beauty of this project was that it integrated old and new technologies. I initially worked on my studio walls, cutting and pasting and painting, and arranging all the different parts of the imagery. I created 13-foot drawings that were then enlarged 400%, then printed on fabric, cut to size of each of the platforms, and embedded into several coats of epoxy resin. This project for me was an opportunity to create a monumental floor painting in a public area and stay true to my studio practice. Prior to creating my final proposal, I went to the station and asked commuters who was the first painter whom they could think of. Hands down, it was Van Gogh. Andy Warhol was a distant second. After talking to commuters, I decided to continue my pursuit of working with paint-by-number kits and chose a paint-by-numbers image of Van Gogh's sunflowers as the underpainting for the platform. In the end, most of the original imagery got buried. However, the platforms all have fragments of sunflowers. Several people have told me that they feel as if they are walking on a carpet underground. I love hearing this. I really wanted to bring a sense of domesticity and delicacy to what was a depressing and extremely dirty space. The Spring Garden area is currently in transition. There's a vitality in the air. My hope is that Walking on Sunshine reflects that energy.
What do you think of it?
I think it looks great, actually.
Some of the questions I asked myself when writing the proposal for the project were, what does a subway system offer its community other than an efficient way to get from point A to point B? What, if any, is the psychological impact of an underground transportation system compared to ones that exist on the street level or above the city's skyline? How does an underground public space impact people from differing socioeconomic backgrounds? What could I create to activate this previously undefined social mixing place? I wanted to know, are there ways to inspire commuters to appreciate and even value their in-between waiting spaces, especially when the inherent meaning of an underground stop has been stop and go? Finally, would it be possible to momentarily transport people to a place of appreciation where sunlight, trees, and fresh air do not exist?
The other body of work in her Projects Gallery show last fall were Margery Amdur's amazing assemblages made out of cosmetic sponges.
This is a cosmetic sponge, and they come in various sizes. These are just foam rubber, and women use them to put makeup on. When I first started thinking about using sponges, I wasn't sure where it would lead. And when I went to the computer and looked up sponges, there was a company called Cosmetic, and I ended up ordering boxes of sponges.
These artworks can be seen in a one-person show at the Noyes Museum outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey, from June 7th to September 8th, 2013.
I'm Dori Papadimitriou, Director of Exhibitions and Collections at the Noyes Museum of Art of Stockton College. We are extremely happy to present an exhibition of the works of Margery Amdur, a very talented artist who we had the pleasure of working with in this installation. Her intensity with creating multifaceted works really came together in this exhibition. Not only the intensity of creating the pieces themselves, but also the installation process. Margery was incredibly driven to make each piece absolutely beautiful for the viewer.
So how does Margery make these dazzling artworks? And how did she come up with the idea in the first place? I was lucky enough to visit her studio one day and got some answers. Margery is very close to some of her students at Rutgers and often employs them to help her make her pieces.
Because I work with students helping me, there's almost kind of like a barn raising or quilting bee aspect to it. And that's kind of some of the beauty of it. So we can sit around and we can talk. Something with when you're working with your hands, and then when you're around people for a certain amount of time, it becomes actually these personal stories are shared. And that's something I think the beauty of the piece that nobody else has to know about. It's kind of like sewn into the fabric. So all the stories and everything we've talked about will never be out to the public. It will just be kind of our thing, and I really like that.
Because the cosmetic sponges come in only a limited number of forms, Margery and her crew often cut and glue them into larger entities.
A lot of my work is about making things large from very tiny parts. So I thought I'll trust that if I color a lot of these, something will happen. I started to take them and make different species. This is one type of plant form. Then I would take the rectangular ones and I would make these. And then I have all these different kind of combinations of materials that I make.
Margery's work with sponges started as floor pieces, and then later she began to create works which hang on the wall.
There have been flowers and the sensibility of gardens in my work for years. A lot of architecture right now, and especially in Europe, they're making gardens on the sides of buildings. A building becomes a vehicle to hold this landscape. I thought I could go somewhere with that and make these large pieces.
For the floor pieces, color is applied before they are assembled. For the wall pieces, Margery has a different process for color.
This basically is how all the wall pieces start. All the sponges have been glued down, so I have basically a textured canvas to work on.
She then underpaints with gouache and/or permanent ink to create base colors and get a general idea for the overall color composition. This composition is then extended and modified by application of pastels and workable fixative. Margery thinks of these wall-hanging works as paintings, and with the different color and textural effects of gouache, ink, and pastel, she has complete flexibility and control over the color.
I haven't had anybody else work on these except for myself. For me, they kind of become art when they're colored.
One of the most interesting things about these is that they are not installed flat on the wall.
What was flat when it initially came in became undulating with peaks and valleys and very organic in nature.
They'll never be shown the same way twice. I hung this one already to 2 different spaces. It has some of the same characteristics, but it felt very different in both locations.
What explains the creativity and imagination of an artist like Margery Amdur? Part of it is a restlessness. How did you even come up with this idea?
I sure did not set out to make constructions out of sponges, but when it started, I had just finished this big project on an underground subway station, and it was a 2-year project. And I came back to my studio thinking that I was going to be making large drawings and collages. I would continue the way I was working for the subway project, but now I would just be making it for galleries and museums. But I got back to my studio and I just couldn't work that way. I felt like I was depleted of imagery. It was a pretty scary feeling. Not that I haven't been there before, but you know, it's never fun. I started to go through this, what is my art about? Who am I? What direction do I want to go? And I felt like I wanted to make something soft. And then I started looking up artists online, you know, artists who make soft sculpture. And I knew that wasn't it, but there was something about a fall that I needed to make something to catch me, or something like that, right? I had no idea. I do yoga, and so I thought, oh, I'll try drawing on yoga mats. Well, that didn't turn out. I had a lot of pastels left over from years ago. I took the pastels and I found these pan pastels. You have these tools and you put different heads on these tools. And they're sponges. You work on drawing with these tools with sponges.
Almost like a palette knife?
Almost like a palette knife. And when I saw these sponges, I thought, wow, I really just like the sponges. You know, it's not the drawing that I really liked, but I liked the way the sponges look coated with pastels. Might there be something here? I went to the computer and I started looking up sponges. And I wasn't even thinking about cosmetic sponges, but that's what came up. And for years, I would use unlikely materials in ways that promoted gender issues. I just felt like I am really lucky because my work over the course of my lifetime has been about gender issues. And here I am looking at these sponges, and who uses these sponges but women? I thought, God, if there could be something here, I am really lucky because it would be honest for me to work this way.
I find Margery's fearless exploration very inspiring. As an artist, she remains fully open to any and all aesthetic possibilities. There may be a chaotic quality to her search, but once she's found something that has meaning for her, she pursues it to the very end. And she never wastes anything, as one of the pieces in her Noyes Museum show makes very clear.
These gloves are actually the byproduct of the creation of Margery's pieces. Hundreds of gloves are used to color each tiny cosmetic sponge.
Creativity is a curious thing. Cosmetic sponges and gardens hanging on the sides of buildings. A feeling of ennui, pan pastels, and a sense of community. Margery Amdur's ability to take a variety of experiences, feelings, ideas, and the odd stuff of this world, and synthesize it into a beautiful art is magical indeed.